welcome once again. This is the Doctor of Digital, the Doctor of Digital podcast. The purpose of the show is to transform your business and life with education and inspiration. I introduce busy business leaders to trends in business, technology, and marketing to highlight people you should know. As we explore the intersection of education, technology, and modern learning, I'm excited to dive into the trends and innovations that are shaping the future of education. But before we get completely started, I want to ask a question. Are you ready to revolutionize the way we learn? With the rise of remote learning tools and the increasing importance of technology in the classroom, it's clear that education is undergoing a significant transformation. But what does this mean for students, teachers, and administrators? And how can we harness the power of technology to create a more effective, efficient, and engaging learning experience? My guest today is a seasoned expert in technology with over 20 years of experience in full cycle implementation projects, sales and distribution, software development, and effective customer services. With a proven track record of growing revenue, supervising globally dispersed teams, and improving communication between operations and IT departments, my guest is the perfect person to share insights on the future of education technology. From his work in incubation management to his expertise in system and implementation and project management, my guest has a unique perspective on the ways in which technology can be used to improve education outcomes. During this episode, we'll do a deep dive into the changes and hot topics of scaling education with technology, including its biggest challenges and growth. I will leverage the expertise of my guest and how to navigate the unique dynamics of the field. By the end of this episode, you'll be better equipped to know what to do, and I encourage you to contact my guest, Wade Erickson, EdTech Innovator. And with that, I want to welcome Wade to the program. How are you doing today, Wade?
Well, thank you so much. I really look forward to this conversation we're having. It's an area that I've been thinking about and involved with for quite some time, and so I really appreciate being on the show.
Well, it's fantastic, as I think we've had some good conversations before, and I
Sure.
expect this one is going to be just like that. So I'm really interested. If you could tell us the story, like how did you get interested in this in the first place, and what's the background?
Well, when I got out of college in the late '80s, I went into work for the U.S. Navy as a civilian, and the engineering facility I worked at was a kind of a unique location. It had 1,000 engineers, and you had to have an engineering degree to get a job there. And So we were also a schoolhouse. So we taught classes in quality assurance and other things to other DoD facilities. And in the mid '90s, Congress passed a law to improve the education of the government side of the acquisition process for weapon systems, and it was called the Defense Acquisition University. And my facility was the first on the Navy side, and Army and Air Force, they all had schools that participated,
Okay.
and we started teaching classes, and we'd fly in all the students to a location and
Very
fly
good.
in the teachers, and all this was taxpayer dollars, and so it was getting very expensive. um, and Thousands and thousands and thousands of people needed to be educated in these congressionally mandated programs. So we started playing with this thing called distance learning back then. That was the time frame. This is about '94 time frame. And this was 56K dial up. Most people really didn't even know what the internet was. I remember that famous David Letterman, Bill Gates conversation they had, and when Bill Gates was on the show explaining the internet to David Letterman in '95. So this is early days, dial up modems at best at home. And back then it was about a glorified, correspondence course, pushing out digital stuff. But in my mind, I was like, oh, this is going to change the future. And I'm anticipating video and audio and all these things are going to come to this browsers. Now, browsers couldn't even play audio back then.
Yep.
But I was like, this is going to really change how education is, not only in college, but it just like the music industry was impacted, where people could, artists, and I was in the music industry in California at the time too. And I was so excited about this that I basically started handy coding HTML in '95, and I left the defense industry and went full time into software development by '97. opened my own first software company and the dot-com boom and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But in the back of my mind, it was always like, well, we're going to be pushing all of this technology. And I knew from the music industry that there's a lot of pushback from the status quo. Uh,
Sure.
and knowing that the public school systems and stuff would really kind of see this not only as a challenge to absorb the technology, but somewhat of a threat. These, these big entities like the music industry saw the internet as a threat. And I think there's still a lot of concerns with AI and machine learning and all these things that we have now, multimedia, personalized education through video, audio, and text. Um, and there's billions and billions and billions of dollars being invested in education technology right now.
Hmm.
And, but the kid on the other end of that technology is still has not been supported because right now, if public school, private schools, charters are going to be a little slower to adopt this new technology that's coming out, these platforms,
Hmm.
the online model is going to be the one. So online high schools and virtual schools, they're going to be the ones that are going to absorb this the fastest because they have the biggest benefit to applying all of these technologies. So what does that mean? The kids are going to have to be at home taking these online classes because the physical entities, whether it's be public, private, or charter, are a little slower to absorb that. Now, eventually, they all will absorb that. Um, so where I saw this, and this was again decades ago, 20 years ago, I started talking about this idea of having support for the kids that are in online models,
Okay.
and a place to go that they could go. And this was pre WeWork, virtual working. And so now we've seen this, especially during the pandemic. Kids, 100% learned from home.
Hmm. Yeah.
And, they say upwards of 30% did not return back to the schools right away after the pandemic because some of them actually excelled in this virtual delivery of education. So yeah, now I think with all the pressures on spending, now we have a new administration that is targeting the public's, the federal level of public education as a area to cut back on. I think right now we spend close to $900 billion a year on education in this country, and about 10% of it comes from the federal government. So that means the 90% is really on the state, whether it be local, property taxes, those kind of things that bring in the money to pay for this. And so, and if you look at the spending, it's quite a spread between what the average student in a public school system is spent. It ranges anywhere from like on the low end of 6 or 7 grand a year,
Hmm.
all the way up to the high end of about $25,000 a year. In some of the, New York's like 21, 22, and I think Vermont's like 25 or 26, Connecticut, all of those big money. California's close to 20. That's a college education, right?
That's for sure.
Every year. And we're paying that for these kids. So by the time they finish 12 years of school, $250,000 we got invested in them. $250,000. That's a
Mhm.
lot of money, and a lot of the kids are questioning the education they're getting.
Absolutely.
So, and then layer on the digital native kids coming into kindergarten that are, um, have been listening to YouTubes and watching YouTubes. I know my grandson when he was 3, before he could talk, he could surf YouTube and watch for, look for videos that he
Yeah.
wanted. Millions and millions of words came into his head before he even hit kindergarten. So these kids, we've in a sense reprogrammed some of what of their brain and how it processes the shit, swipe left, swipe right kind of
Mhm.
uh, social understanding that these kids have with exposure to information, good or bad. It's still information, and it's changing how your brain is, because we get endorphins and stuff, and Facebook and all those guys, they have these habit forming programs, and it's all about endorphin release and dopamines and all that kind of stuff. And so when they hit school, it's traditional education, teacher in front of the blackboard kind of stuff. I kind of have a saying, they're riding a Ferrari to school and they hit the school and they're riding a horse at school.
Yeah.
And nothing to, it's this is not to say anything negative about school teachers. They work hard. I have my sister and multiple nieces that are school teachers, and one of them is a kindergarten teacher, and they're struggling to keep the attention of these kids. And um, so things are going to change, absolutely, and technology is going to play a major role in how kids in the future are educated.
What's interesting is, this way we chatted before, and it's such a parallel because I was teaching in a traditional university setting, liberal arts setting, and standing up in front of a classroom. And '94 is when it hit. I go, oh, this is going to change everything. It's the internet. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm completely on board. Can you talk about some of the changes that you've seen and we have seen since that period of time and where we are currently?
Well, obviously, the internet played a huge role. And as new medias could be streamed quickly, video being the last one, of course. I remember very well when a browser was playing WAV files, not even MP3, and so those were huge, 10 times as big as an MP3 file. And so as that shifted and MP3 came out, and then you had the streaming technologies and all the different piracy sites and all of that.
Yes.
We all know. I mean, kids that grow up now, when was the last time somebody bought a CD? I mean, I used to go without dinner. I would skip dinner in college to be able to afford to buy an album, when I was in college, because I was living on so little money in college that I mean, what kid would skip a meal to, listen to music nowadays, right? It's just free. It's a commodity now, and it's completely changed the market. And so I anticipated that in '95, and that's really what caused me to jump into the internet was the impact I saw it being in music, and then of course education. So then, obviously, the APIs, all of the microservices architectures, all of those things, and then of course AI now and machine learning. I started dabbling with that 20 years ago, and I was working. It was really one of my first projects when I started my company in '98, and it was about using artificial intelligence to match resumes against job descriptions.
Mm.
And you already have the Khan Academies and stuff that have it's textual bidirectional tutoring AI right now, but it's just a matter of time before now it becomes verbal. And it's already there. You can do Copilot. You can have Copilot. You can take a picture of a problem and say, tell Copilot to, walk me through this. Don't give me the answer, but walk me through it. And it's a conversation for free to teach you how to solve a problem. Um, that is definitely right around the corner. And I think, the school systems, public could learn a lesson from the music industry and how they did not take advantage of the technology, because there would be no Apple Music if Sony Music would have decided that the internet was the new way to distribute music. But they fought to keep the CD in the stores because they controlled
Yeah.
96% of the world's distribution of music. Six companies controlled 90, and there was only 10,000 new albums released a year in '95. Now it's in the hundreds of thousands, and those record labels, they just really touch radio. They don't control any distribution anymore. That's all through Apple and Spotify and all that stuff now. And they could have, especially Sony, they had all the players. They could have become the Apple Music of the time without much of an effort. But um, again, the music folks and the technology folks were completely different divisions, so they didn't talk. But that's an example of evolution theory that if you don't um, take serious those disruptive technologies that are coming your way, it will replace you.
Yeah.
And I think even in my model that I'm talking about and sharing is really about supporting using learning centers to support these online students. And it's not a micro school because the curriculum is not mine. The education is done through the online model. the care center, the learning center, is really providing the care and providing these kids the ability to come together, social, emotional kind of support, have an adult in the room, because a lot of parents cannot do the homeschooling thing because they've got to go to work.
Yeah.
And they're concerned about the child, doing the schoolwork at home and the distractions that exist and all of that. So these learning centers, basically, it's like a daycare model, but the kids come and they do their online education at the center,
Okay.
2, 3, 5 days a week. Doesn't have to be every day, but it's a place for them to get together, and it fills the gap that a lot of times the online model struggles to fill. Face-to-face projects, as an example. If we all in the corporate world know that we have to work together with people to
Sure.
do projects and share ideas and distribute work and find strengths and weaknesses. All of that stuff is a very important part of working together to prepare for the workforce, a job one day, and or just life, working with others. And if you're at home all day just doing the online, it's a little bit tougher to do those kind of projects virtually. Not that it's impossible, but when you can do face-to-face stuff, I think there's a benefit to that. Plus, a little bit of physical education helps. I mean, I'm not talking a gymnasium. I'm talking yoga, tai chi, that kind of stuff. In place exercise throughout the day. Blend that with the learning time, and then of course tutoring. That's another, using these AI enabled tutoring models for after the day program, is that kind of is part of the model I'm, supporting and proposing. Um, and, was in my head 20 years ago,
Yeah.
with these online centers, that they needed to be there because the kids, until the schools adopt this approach where the courseware comes to you instead of you going to the classroom, um, it's going to be really a homeschooled model. Or if you're lucky to pick up a charter school in your geography. And the beauty of this is that through online models, um, we it's the first time we've broke the dependency between educational opportunities and zip code.
Mm.
So if you think about it, every kid in the poor part of town has access to the same educational opportunities as the rich part of town. And so it really could change the underserved communities that struggle to have good teachers in their public schools. With this, you could get the best chemistry teacher in the country
Mm-hmm.
that's teaching chemistry online to the worst parts of, South Central LA or something. Um, and so it is something. And then, of course, now take the rural aspect, or even internationally, tribal or India.
Yeah.
I've spent 20 years working with India developers, and their public school system is, very, very tough. In fact, if you get any money, your kid has to be in private school.
Mm.
Something like this, you could have the best online education being pumped out to the rural communities with satellite and, edge computing and all that stuff. And they would have access to top-notch education without maybe even a teacher coming into the, just
Yeah.
having a couple of adults that, to monitor the kids and help them out. And so this is life changing for many, many kids throughout the world to be able to leverage this online education. And then on top of that, you layer AI and machine learning on top of that with personalized education. So now each child, if they're a visual learner, an auditory learner, or a textual learner, we tend to fall, 70% of our country's visual, and 70% of society's visual learners. They'd rather watch the movie than read the book. I'm an audiobook guy. I can rip through audiobooks on a weekend, but ask me to read that, and I went to grad school. I mean, I read well, but I prefer to listen to it. Because my mental model, I can convert the audio into my mental model so fast that I can process what's being presented,
Sure.
versus the text to mental model to now processing that into knowledge. It removes a step. Audio removes the step. And then think of all the kids that would benefit from that, visual learners and auditory learners, because only 10% of our society is textual learners. So they're all now supported independently, because a teacher in front of the blackboard can only teach one speed.
Yep.
And they tend to teach to the upper third of the class, not the lower 2/3. So the lower 2/3 is playing catch up or falling behind. Now, if you fed those kids their own individualized custom presentation of video or audio instead of just the textbook, and they learn at their own pace and they can remediate independent of the availability of the teacher in the classroom or an aide, again, changes how kids learn. And you could have kids that would have failed out becoming A students because of just the change in how we deliver that content. And that's the passion that I have is, I was fortunate enough to be in an incredible public school, prepared me very well for college. I can't say the same for everybody because once I went to college, I was now introduced to kids from all over the state, different states, because I went to school down here in Texas, grew up in Minnesota, and realized how fortunate I was, the high school that I had in my school district, and that's just not the experience that most have. So anyway, do you have any questions for me? I've been doing all the talking.
I had all that. What I was trying to get was the changes and hot topics, and you definitely got that. So
Mhm.
I'm wondering what you could say in terms of what would be some general recommendations, seeing that we are at this really critical point in education. And I think the kids are saying this too. This is what's interesting.
Yes, yeah.
The kids are saying, and you find this from the A students. The A students, I'm bored with school. They don't really
Mhm.
care. They're not motivated. And I go, well, yeah, because we're not having the kinds of things and the kind of experience. I mean, I like the image. I could learn all this stuff, and I get into school, and then all of a sudden it's full stop. I was on a Ferrari, and what happened? It's like I
Mhm.
need to stop. Like, well, what's the deal here? So
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
reminds me,
so
the famous expression of Mark Twain: "Never let school interfere with your education." It's just as relevant today as it was in his day when they had no technology, or relatively none. So, what would you recommend? I mean, what do you think? Where do you think we should go now?
so I think kids need to understand that you learn for your value. You don't learn for your parents.
Yeah.
You don't learn for your society. Ultimately, that learning is for you to improve your life. Because if you earn an education, no one can take credit for that. I can't give my diploma to somebody else.
Yeah.
This is mine, and it's my accomplishment. But you know what? Ultimately, I learned way more outside of college than inside of college.
Sure.
And self-learning is the future. So you have now access. When we were in college and school, we didn't have access at our fingertips to, Nobel Prize winning economists that are free courseware from Harvard for free.
Yeah.
Now, you're not going to get a Harvard degree out of it, but you know what? Who cares?
Get the
You
knowledge.
got the Harvard education out of it,
Yeah.
And then MIT, same thing. You can get a computer science bachelor's degree, MIT courseware and teachers for
Mm-hmm.
free. That was never available. I had to go to college. I had to go to a location to get that. Yeah, I could have read the textbook. There was a lot of, people that advocated for just buy the textbooks, go down to the bookstore, buy the books that they're using, and save yourself money. But when I was in school, I mean, my whole bachelor's education at a major university cost $12,000.
Yeah.
That's half of one semester now at this, same school. Um, so it has changed, really about learning how you can learn what's available at your fingertips. Now with AI tutors and stuff, you're going to have these things that I think credentialing is really going to take over, and it's going to be a pass fail model. It's not going to be anything about A's, B's, C's, and D's, because when I'm not competing against anybody else in the class and I'm in my own self pace, why do I have an A, B, C, or D? Either I just demonstrated that I understand the courseware and can demonstrate that I can apply that in a manner that is, that can be evaluated. Why do I need an A, B, C, or D? Either you have it or you don't. And then, so I think that's going to be a big change. I think kids really need to look at, take advantage of online learning. Khan Academy is awesome. It's free, and then you add the Khan Amigo, which is on top of that for $4 a month for the whole family. I mean, they just got to pay for the AI compute. That's all they're charging for. They're not trying to make money off this. So, you know, decide that education is for you.
Hmm.
It's not for anybody else anymore. What is the public school model going to be in this new administration? Is the feds even going to have a Department of Education? Who knows? Um, that's 10% of the total spend that would be removed from society. But then again, you know, with online education, most of it's tuition free, and so if it's already getting paid for, now you just have to look at what's the cost of care, versus the kids at home. Obviously, there's no cost to the family if they're at home, but there's a cost maybe to their education, right? So, so really, the family has to decide. And then now with Texas, right now with the new change out, they're probably going to finally have vouchers here in Texas, which they've been trying. The Republicans have been trying to get through for a long time. I'm talking probably 10 plus years.
Hmm.
And it was the Democrats that were trying to block vouchers, which is different because most other states, it's the Democrats that push the voucher model to change and flexibility for families. And so that's another thing that I think in the states that are now starting to leverage vouchers. The charter schools are going to be full. The private schools are going to be full. Where are these kids going to, go? Public school or online? You know,
And what has really benefited, like that 30% figure is really accurate. Like, where those kids go? Well, where did they go? They went online, they went other places, they went home.
or they went back to school and struggled to go back to the old model. Yeah,
Precisely. So, I mean, I'm curious, you maybe could elaborate a little bit more on the online learning center, how that model works, and what the alternative is. Because
sure.
I think we're at that point.
So, so really, like I said, online learning is has been available for quite some time, decades, right? I mean,
Yeah.
at least probably a decade and a lot of the universities have their own virtual schools. Like University of Texas has a virtual high school.
Yes.
Texas Tech has a virtual high school. Stanford has and it ranges in costs. Like Stanford's online high school is $20,000 a year.
Hmm.
Um, University of Texas is for Texas residents is free. So you got $20,000 for Stanford, free for University of Texas virtual high school. Um, but to take advantage of that, you don't go to the University of Texas to take this high school. You take it at home.
No.
Okay. Um, Now, again, there'll be charter schools that'll pop up, and private schools will start to absorb a lot more of this online model of delivering online teachers, AI driven teachers. There's all going to be all kinds of stuff coming down the pike within the next few years. Um, and I think the budgets for research in this area is going to expand. So for the next 5 to 10 years, I think that homeschooling is really where these online models are going to have to go. And for the families that cannot do homeschooling because of various challenges, maybe there's young kids at home, maybe there's the parents are remote workers and need to be at home and they can't get involved with teaching their kid, those kind of things. There's challenges, and there's only 3% of society is online school right now. Um, maybe 6% is homeschooled, right? And then 10% is private school and charter. That leaves about 80% that's public school. So with only 3%, if you break down that 3%, the majority is a two-parent household with a single income. That leaves mom or dad, in some cases, to be home to help with the education of the kid. That's not society, though.
Right. Yeah.
Society is more dual income and a lot of single family homes that although they might see this great technology coming to online models, homeschooling is just not an option. So, what I am proposing and have launched is a facility, very small, 50 cubicles. Max would ever be 100. Kids come here 2, 3, or 5 days a week.
Hmm.
They do their online education here. We have there's two models of um, online education. You have synchronous models, which means it's a very rigorous, you in front of the computer, you have a teacher that's involved teaching much like they did during the COVID. And then you have asynchronous models, which is self-paced. And so in the self-paced models, I can have a more structured schedule for those folks where we have learning times, we have social times, we have food together, so you have lunch together, you have social time, and
Okay.
you build those bonds in the learning center that you would normally have at a public school or private school, a face-to-face school.
I see.
And but when you go to your learning time, you're completely independent. You don't The kid next to you could be in a completely different grade,
Hmm.
completely different program, and that's learning time. Is so I've decoupled the educational options from the physicality, the geography. So you could pop up these learning centers anywhere to
Hmm.
support the online models that are available to the population. So that's decoupling from educational opportunities from zip code.
Zip code. Yeah.
And so, it's a model that I'm advocating.
Hmm.
Even though I have my own facility, I'll have my own locations, I'll probably franchise this thing, but it's kind of like daycare. You have daycare, all kinds of different daycare models. You have daycares in the home, you
Yes.
have daycares, you have franchises, kindercare, you have the whole spectrum of just daycare for toddlers, right? Well, I see this as potential happening. Co-ops right now, if you look at micro schools, those actually bring a curriculum in, and when the kid comes there, they do the micro schools curriculum. Charter schools, they do the charter schools curriculum. Private school, they do the private schools curriculum, and public school, they do the public school curriculum.
Hmm.
With online, again, I've decoupled the education from the care. And so I can support literally there's I think 10 or 12 different accredited programs in Texas that are accredited. You add the unaccredited and it's even more.
Hmm.
So so there's going to be all kinds of really cool online schools that are coming down, that are really technology, virtual reality. Take chemistry with your virtual reality headsets, or biology, or even because I'm a physical location, maybe we have a small chemistry set that they can use physically, that's not Bunsen burners and stuff. But, it's largely, if people go to the onlinelearningcenters.net, they can see a video of the facility layout. And, I'm sitting here right now in the common area. And we're building it out now. I mean, it's built so I can take kids in, but it's sometimes it takes me 3 or 4 minutes to describe this to a school teacher that's been doing this for 20 years. So I am, I have to create the market to be able to create the demand. But
Sure.
I get kids all the time I'm seeing online and chat groups and all that stuff that these kids are just frustrated with what is their educational opportunities and why am I even learning this stuff,
They're bored.
They're bored. I mean, think about it. You're doing all your social media. You got 1,000 channels of TV at home. When I was growing up, I had 4 channels of TV.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the house. I was out of the house from in the summer from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. I
Absolutely.
wasn't. I was out riding my bike. I was out,
You bet.
and that was, if I would have. I remember when Pong came out, and that's why I think I'm in the software business, and I think I've played 10 hours of video games in my life. I mean, my kid plays 10 hours in 2 days, my grandkid, So I just, because I was just so involved outside of the house, with riding bikes and sports and all that stuff, even when, video games started to kind of come around, that would have been in the 70s for me. Um, I just didn't attach it. We had it. We had Pong. Our family got one, but it was nowhere near Call of Duty and all the things that are out there now. And of course, I think that has some issues in our society. For shooter games and when
Sure.
you're seeing those visuals every day, all day, thousands and thousands of hours, it's got to change your thinking and empathy and all that. And that's another big thing too is the bullying and all that stuff. my facility, that won't be tolerated. So I can create a environment that's a safe place for kids and that want to learn. And public schools, to get rid of a kid that's a bad apple is tough. They have these in Texas here. We have these DAEP programs where it's a little miniature school, and they're in white T-shirts and blue jeans, and it's like juvie, um, and that's where they have to send the bad kids, and then they learn their lesson, and hopefully they keep from going back there. But that's what the public schools have to do, to provide an environment for kids to learn, separate the tough ones to educate, So, um, but yeah, I think online education really opens up an opportunity to support kids in ways that just were never supported in decades and decades, hundreds of years of learning. You know that kids that just didn't learn well, dyslexics. I mean, add the disabilities on top of just kids that just didn't read well, and that wasn't their preferred learning style. They focused on other things. They dropped out, but
Yeah.
yet they could have probably been A students with other kinds of information to learn.
And could you provide some actionable tips? Because I'm saying, we're at this precipice here. And if you're a parent and if you describe all the
Mhm.
scenarios that we saw even clearer with the pandemic, what sort of actionable tips can you provide for a parent who's concerned and would like to get a better education?
If your kid is struggling in school, don't think that that is the only option. Look at the online education options that are available in your state. I would recommend an accredited program because that transfers back to the public school. So let's say you have a teenager struggling in middle school and they move into online education and they do a year or two of online education as a homeschool model. Maybe you don't have a, facility like I'm talking about in the area, or a charter school that, they could, or maybe even affordability. Private school is expensive.
Yeah,
Um, the school that's a block away is $20,000 a year. The high school that's a block away from me. So,
sure.
um, so explore, look at online education models. These kids can self-learn. They're spending hours and hours on their phones,
Okay.
flipping through YouTube videos and stuff, and they're learning. It might not be what you want them to learn, but they're learning. Stuff's going in their head, and they're processing it, right?
Yeah.
So, to look at what's available in your area. Um, don't be afraid to jump out and support your kids. This is your kids' future.
Hmm.
We talk about education being really the pathway to being successful. It doesn't even have to be college anymore. Your kids just have to understand you can self-learn. You can start a business because guess what? I got grad school degrees. I got all, mechanical engineering degree, USC grad school. Um, I've had businesses, and you know how many times people that have considered using my services have asked for my college education?
Zero.
None.
There we go.
They say, "What do you do? How much does it cost? When can it get done?"
Yeah.
I don't care what your background is. I don't care where you went to school. I need you to get this job done. And so when you learn how to learn, which is really all I think a college degree shows that you can learn. I mean, that's what people said, about my engineering degree. As soon as I jumped into the real world, all of that stuff, I didn't get to use a whole lot of it. I had to learn what they needed me to learn to earn my paycheck.
Yeah.
And that's life. So the fastest you can get out there to get the basics understood and then choose the field that you want to be, learn to create value because that's ultimately how society works. The degree isn't the value. What you can do with the information in your head is the value.
Exactly.
And that's, I think the sooner we learn that self-education, self-learning with all the opportunities and education we have, so much free stuff. Salesforce, as an example, that platform, free trailheads. All you got to do is take the exam. You know, you
Hmm.
take those certification exams, you can fast track to a six-figure salary like that. No college education. That's the beauty of software. It's about what can you build because the multipliers on your time are just huge. For every, one programmer at Google, generates, I think, $10 million in revenue. So if you divide their valuation by how many employees they have, now a lot of them are contractors that don't get figured in that. But companies like Facebook and Google and stuff, those people, every employee generate is tied to millions and millions and millions of dollars in revenue. Very different than a landscaping company,
Yeah.
you know, that might only be have a multiple of two or three, you know. So find things that you can learn that generate value that people are willing to pay for. That's all about life. That's how you get successful. And ask people for help, get a mentor. As I get older, I love helping people figure out, now whether they listen to me or not, that's here, that's up to them. But I love to share my, learn from other people's mistakes, they'll tell you the shorter path, you
That's
know.
how you learn best when you fail.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, fail and learn from other people's failures, not your own. And that's what mentorship's about. What shouldn't I do is important or maybe more important than what I should do,
Yeah.
and you get that from, wise mentors, so.
I never learned anything by earning a degree. It's like
Yes, yes.
I did all that stuff. I didn't learn anything.
I loved college, don't get me wrong, but it
I,
was, and I loved learning. I mean, it is one of the, if I take these, Clifford things about learning how you are, and they, you know, measure certain parameters and characteristics, learning has always come out as number one for me. Um, I watch documentary films. I mean, I'd much rather watch a documentary than a drama, um, or a comedy or something like that, because my brain just is can't be filled up, so I think for the kids that are learners that are really struggling with the teacher in front of the blackboard model, you know, hit these digital models, learn at your own pace, graduate at 14, start online college,
yeah.
maybe even get a GED. If you can't do that, get the GED and then go to online college. And by 17, 18 years old, you could have a couple years knocked out, and leverage what's available.
That's great for the entrepreneur. Start a business.
Yes, and that's part of my program here is I want to have projects around entrepreneurialism where they as a team come together and you get a group of 5,
Yeah.
find out what each other's strengths are, take little online surveys. It'll always have an online component. Create a business model, write a business plan, write a marketing plan, write a sales plan. All of these are important. And then have little Shark Tank competitions between my centers, competition with other groups, programming projects, all of these kinds of things we can do here that you probably wouldn't get. You'd have to go to an outside organization that helps kids with entrepreneurialism stuff. And I think, what is it? 90% of people are in small businesses, that work in the US. So there's always room for another business, I mean, 90% fail, but that's okay.
But
You know?
it's also the driver of the economy is a small business and
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs, right? The big
It sure
companies
is.
are not
Sure.
for profit centers. It's the small companies, the innovators who are out there. So you are open for business. So I make that clear
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I also want to say, like, now you've heard what you have to say and what you're proposing. How do they get a hold of you? What's your contact information and make sure they're able to reach out to you?
Yeah, so I have my first facility. It's in Fort Worth, Texas. So really kind of the model is, a 10-mile radius of the facility is kind of the market. Right now it's, I'm open to other people that have listened to this as an idea and say, hey, I want to open up a learning center in my area. Tell me what kinds of things I need to be, thinking about. Um, what, how does the city, what do they call me?
Yeah.
I'm not a school. I don't hand out grades, but the city's got to label me something for my occupancy certification, So, and the local schools, public school, some in the public school sees me in a threat. Others, the counselors, the truancy officers, see me as a benefit because the school districts are measured on 3 measures. One is their own graduation rate. 2 is their what's called the completion rate. And 3 is the dropout rate. And any way they can minimize that dropout rate affects their grade as a school district. I satisfy that middle. So if kids complete a accredited online program in the state, it absolutely goes to the benefit of that school district. That somebody completed through now, even just homeschooling though is considered completion. If the parents write you a diploma and say you graduated from high school, that still counts as completion.
Mhm.
GEDs counts as completion. So right now I know that there's folks in the public school system that see me as I'm drawing kids away from the public. No, these kids are ready to go. You know, I am all about supporting. I'm not trying to steal kids from the public school system. I'm trying to support the kids that are going to squeak out and I don't want them to drop out. I don't want them to just go through a miserable existence in high school because of environment or educational opportunities or any of that kind of stuff. I want every kid to have an opportunity. I mean, this is the true no kid left behind,
Definitely.
because you can't just, cheat on the kid next to you when you're doing online education. The kid next to you is in a completely different program.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's 100%. You're accountable for your own progress, That is no kid left behind. So anyway, but yeah, onlinelearningcenters.net.
Okay.
I've got a meetups for just in general online learning for parents, that and that's going to be there's a meetup for that. I'm going to start so I have podcasts that I've already done podcasts in the past. One was Tech Leaders Unplugged that people could see that I used to host, and then but I'm going to have some around education technology. I'm going to have one around the Texas voucher program, because that's still now with the newest election. So we're only a week into this. It looks like it's going to pass in Texas. So, there's going to be a lot of people that are like, how does this vouchers work? What can I spend voucher money on? So I'll have guests that are, people behind the voucher program, legislators, schools, to help, navigate this whole voucher thing, because it'll be, similar as other states. I'm sure they'll probably adopt some other state programs. So, but yeah, that's the best way. OnlineLearningCenters.net. They can find me on LinkedIn, um, and email me. Always willing to share with people, and I do want competition. I want other people to do this kind of a model. There's no way. I mean, even if I opened 100 centers at 100 kids, that's 10,000. That's one little school. That's one school district here in my local community with 100 facilities. So I can't do this all myself. I would love for people to just say, just like a daycare center, I want to help kids. How do I help kids? I like that model. How much does it cost to open a center? Where should I open a center? What should I look for in the market? The best absorption? Because ultimately, you still got to find parents that are willing to pay for it, unless there's a voucher that'll pay for it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, very enlightening,
okay.
very exciting. And you and I have been thinking about this for a long time. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally on board with it, because it's a time that has come. So I appreciate your insight. I appreciate your innovation and your expertise. Thank you very, very much for being my guest today, Wade. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on, and good luck with your podcasts in the future. And I think it's a great medium to get the word out for things like this.
It's the best. It works for both of us. So thanks again.
Excellent.
I,
All right. Thank you.
you bet. If you like what you're hearing, and certainly hope that you do, make sure that you like, subscribe, positively review. And also, I want to take a little bit of time to thank the supporters of the program, and that is the publishers of both On Track, Ian Hunter, and of course, Burning America, for all their support. So if you want to reach out to me, I'm the Idea to Author Coach, guiding you from draft to shelf. If you've got an idea or a text in mind, or you've been working on, let's chat. I help business leaders, CEOs, and entrepreneurs break through their obscurity through written presentations, building credibility and authority. That's the private Facebook group, the Idea to Author Coach. Reach out, and we can have a chat there as well. Until the next time, this is the Doctor of Digital signing off. Deus Vult.